So I'm gonna do something real quick, right? Some sex education for the guys, for the women too, but it's mostly for the guys to understand, right? Some dick talk, right? So I'm gonna give you the ranges of the dick sizes. I'm gonna tell you some different things. This is off the cuff, just off the top of my head, because as a sex coach, I work with men, I work with women. As a dom, I have certain conversations, but I'm a lifestyle dom, 24/7. That's what I do. I don't deal with women outside of that type of dynamic. So it's not something that I do just for kink and just for play. Like, no, it's more of a mindset thing than anything else. So if we want to talk about dick sizes, start off that micro, like 1 to 2 inches. All right, cool, that's micro, right? Or 1 to 2.5. Then 3 to 4, or 2.5 to 4, okay, small, right? 4.5 to 6 is average. Because you know the average is 5.1 to like 5.6 inches. So I'm just gonna leave the whole size range of what's average is 4.5 to 6 inches. All right? Now, plus 6 inches to 7 inches, right? That's large, or it's above average, right? 7.5 to 8.5 is big. Standard issue large, right? Then once you get to 9 inches, that's huge. Anything over 9 inches, that's a huge ass dick, right? So I'm gonna go back over the sizes. So micro is up into about 2.5, 3 inches, right? From about 3 inches to 4, 4.5, that's small. At 4.5 plus to 6, that's average. From 6 plus to 7, that's, it's above average. From 7.5 to, and then some women will say large starts at 7, and then some will say it starts at 8. So I just say large starts at 7.5. You can fudge these things by how it's gonna work. But 7.5, 8.5, standard issue large. 9 plus, huge. So depending on what size you have, shape, that does different things too. Another thing to understand, and this is something I personally believe, is that in all the women I dealt with, vaginas are more alike than they're different. I've seen and experienced more variations of different women's vaginas depending on how aroused they were than I've seen across different women that I've dealt with. So one thing to understand about these conversations where a woman says dick size doesn't matter, it depends on a few different factors of whether or not to trust that. To me, typically, I wouldn't really trust that. For some women, saying it doesn't matter means that that's not what they with you for anyways, right? For some women, they'll say that because they haven't been sexually opened up to be able to receive that, but that doesn't mean that they never will be. And you can deal with a woman who thinks yours is just fine the way it is, and she can cheat on you one day with a dude who get her super aroused, and now she a size queen. So you got to understand that matter too. There's also women who have learned through Kegels and through experience that they can learn to not only enjoy a huge one, an average one, they can also enjoy a smaller one, because in their experience, they can use their Kegels and their pelvic floor to pretty much milk an orgasm out of themselves, regardless of the size of the penis that they're having sex with. So you got to understand that as well. So when a woman says dick size doesn't matter, it means a variety of things. It means a variety of things. But what I will say is that oftentimes men being okay or good enough isn't something that we typically desire to hear from a woman. Because a woman desires a certain level of something that feels like not everybody gets it. You don't have to have the biggest dick in the world to be a good lover. You don't. Not at all. And really, there's something, if you go on Reddit, I'm in the Big Dick Problems group. And within that, there's something called the Goldie Cock, right? Or the Goldilocks zone. And I believe that's from like 6.5 to 8 inches. For most women, that's going to be like the perfect size. It's like 6.5 to 8 inches. So you got to understand that. But what I will say about vaginas, most vaginas that I've been in, they bottom out at around 6.5 to 7, rarely 7.5 inches. That's where most vaginas bottom out in my experience, right? It's where when they're fully aroused, that's about as deep as they can take it. So really, for me, when I'm dealing with a woman, I like to deal with a woman to where I have a capacity to pretty much go in pretty much balls deep, but I can still touch the bottom of it. And part of the reason why I say that is because I like to have the ability to give a woman cervical orgasms from penetration, A-spot orgasms. That's like where I do a lot of my best work. And you need to be able to go deep to do that. You got the O-spot. The O-spot is going to be pretty much deeper than the cervix because it's on the back part. You know, there's this little clip of Lunette. She was talking about that. You know, you can't go through the cervix, but you slide off to the back corner of it. Then you got the that back pocket, the O-spot, the posterior fornix. You have to understand all the different spots within the vagina and know what type of penis you have to hit those spots. So even if you're not on a larger side, if you have a very firm penis and it's got a curve to it or a big head, then if you know how to angle yourself right, you can hit the G-spot. But she has to be very aroused in order to do that, to get that off, right? Very aroused, very relaxed in that vagina, right? But you got to be on either on the thicker side, big head, or you got to have a certain curve to it. And there's curves, there's slants, there's angles. If you're having sex with a woman, typically most of the good shit is going to be near their front wall. So whatever angle your penis is at, where there's resistance, if you push in that opposite direction, have the opposite direction facing, right, the front wall of the vagina. So if your penis is angled up, then when you're hitting it from the front, especially if you put her legs up, right, on your shoulders, then it'll angle you up. Some men have a penis that's going to be more so slanted down or angled down. Not necessarily that it's soft, but it's just that's the angle that it's at. If that's the case, hitting it from the back is going to work for you a lot. Prone bone is going to be good for that. Another thing is if you got a dick that's slanted to the left, one thing I suggest is that you put a woman on her right side, hit it from the side, but don't just go straight at it as if your body is perpendicular to her body. You rotate yourself somewhat to almost hitting it from an angle to where you're coming at it from the back side, right? So one is like your body could be like perpendicular lined up with hers. You kind of angle like at in between like where her legs and her body is, and you hit it from that angle, and you just make sure that the opposite angle of wherever your penis is at is going to be rubbing up and creating friction with that front wall. Now what I will say is this: for a woman's vagina, certain spots have to be activated through her level of arousal and her level of desire for you, and also her level of feeling safe. Now, like I said, there's two ways to make a woman feel safe. You know, is comfort or desire, right? Comfort or desire. There's two ways to make a woman feel comfortable, which is either she is going to desire you to the point where you can do things that would make her feel uncomfortable and she enjoys it, or you make yourself as comfortable as you can to her. And I prefer to take what I call the bigger fish theory, which is typically how I work with women, and when it's women I'm dealing with personally, then oftentimes it might work more so on a basis of using the bigger fish theory, which is where if a woman's gone through trauma, then I can give her an opportunity to re-experience the same things that may have caused her trauma, but from a perspective of those being things that she desires and she's aroused enough to enjoy those things. So it's a lot of different things to understand when it comes to physical compatibility, right? Physical compatibility. You know, Kegels are something that not only help with the woman taking a bigger dick, but a smaller dick. Something I'll also say for women is this: it's not that you'll never be able to take a huge dick. If you get aroused enough, you'll be able to take it. It's more so a matter of this: you don't want to be broken into a level that is beyond what you can find in a partner who you want to be monogamous with if you desire a monogamous relationship. It's not going to benefit your relationship. It's not. But also you have to understand that if you find a man, he's a good man, and he's a little bit on the bigger side, a little bit on the smaller side, something you're not necessarily comfortable with, your arousal level is going to play a big part in your ability to enjoy it. Like, there's a certain attachment that comes with having experiences that are superlatives. Like, if a woman experiences some little dick that's just really good to her, and not just because of the emotional connection. Because something I've seen that can happen sometimes, a woman can be with a man who's on the smaller side as far as his penis, and she can like it and enjoy it because of her emotional attachment to the man. But once that emotional attachment goes away, so does the sexual attachment. And when that is something that occurs, then you won't be able to make love and make up. You know, something I say is that if you can make love, you can make up. Relationships go through hard times. Relationships have issues from time to time. You need to be able to have some type of sexual attachment to the individual to regrow your bond. Like, especially if you're somebody who wants to build something and have something long term. Because to expect that no one's ever going to do or say something that hurts your feelings is not realistic when it comes to understanding relationships. Everything isn't just about sex. Everything isn't just about penetration. But my personal belief is that when it comes to a sexual relationship, especially one that's meant to be monogamous, you need to have a certain level of a baseline compatibility when it comes to your physical parts and how they line up, right? So I don't believe in basing your sexual compatibility with someone based off of non-penetrative sex. Yes, you can eat pussy real good, but somebody can learn that. There's a lot of things you can learn, but what you can't necessarily learn is your parts aligning, right? Now, a woman's vagina is meant to mold itself to the penis of the man that she's dealing with. So if a woman's dealing with you consistently, you arouse her to a high level, she's enjoying that. A woman can do Kegels, tighten up, and then that's the dick she likes right there. That's boom, that's it. Especially if you're an average man, you're a little bit smaller. If you're a bigger man, you got to open her up to it. But the thing to understand about it is this, and this is kind of where men get fixed up on the penis size thing, is because a lot of women are honest about this, but it's probably easier for a man to go back sexually than for a woman to go back sexually, right? As far as how you feel about the person. It's a difference between being able to tolerate sex because it's good enough to tolerate it because you like the overall person versus feeling like, man, I done stepped up. I done came into a whole new world of sexuality in the way that our bodies are compatible. We just fit. This is it. I love this. It's different to have that experience where a woman feels like a man is stretching her out and she enjoys that, and then to have to go back down to something that doesn't really hit it the same way, because then it's more so comfort based, right? It's just like when a woman tells a man, oh, yours is perfect because the bigger one's hurt, right? It should be yours is perfect because it hits all the spots that need to be hit, feels good, have all those orgasms, all those experiences. But if you contrast it with just because the bigger one's hurt, then it's just about comfort. It's not about actual desire or pleasure that you're getting out of it. Now, if it's a matter of I get all the pleasure that I want to get without the drawbacks of the pain, it's different. But what you also have to understand is that once the desire level gets high enough, then a woman's receptive to a certain level of pain, and the pain mixes with pleasure. And pleasure by itself oftentimes doesn't reach the same pinnacles and the same superlatives and peaks of when pain has the opportunity to mix with pleasure. And you don't only have to use your penis to create the pain that mixes with pleasure. You know what I mean? You can use different aspects of BDSM. You know, there's different things that you can do. All right, but you also have to understand, there's the thickness side of it too, right? So if we're going to talk about thickness, and I know I'm kind of late on this, right? But the average thickness is about 4.5 inches around circumference. That's girth, right? And then typically what a lot of women say they like when it comes to like the Goldilocks zone is like 5 inches of thickness around. And it's around. So don't look at it as across, it's around. When it's like conspicuously thick, right? That's where it gets to more sort of 5.5 and 6 range. And at the 6 range plus, and there are some men who have it, but that's very rare. At that level of thickness, you are super thick. Now, you have to understand the way that you're interacting with a woman, right? A woman has to be adequately aroused for anything that goes outside of average to a certain extent. So that means that if you're not on a very big side, a woman has to be very aroused, right? Now, if she's too aroused to the point where she doesn't feel it, y'all are just not really compatible like that. I'm going to be honest with you. But if you're very thick, right? If you're like 5.5 inches around, then you're going to have to do a lot of a lot of foreplay to turn a woman on, or at least deal with a woman who's very highly sexually attracted to you. By doing things in this particular way, you get to, you may not get to do as much quickies until you've broken a woman in. And that breaking in is just a certain process. There's certain things that happen. And I've talked about it before. I've done it with multiple women. Sometimes a woman is going to cap out as far as how much penis size you can take. But then after she gets broken in, then dick size becomes less of an issue. But once a woman experiences certain levels of being stretched and pleasure and enjoying that, and she does it a few times and she gets accustomed to that, then that becomes the new normal. And like I said before, overstimulation is what leads to duplicity. See, what people need to understand sometimes about cheating and about variety and about being promiscuous, it's not so much that lessens a person's value as a person, right? Now, cheating, it shows you have a lack of character, right? But certain situations, I wouldn't even necessarily consider cheating to a certain extent. Like if you've been with somebody, you ain't had sex for months on top of months, the person doesn't listen to your request for your needs being met, some people, they just gonna monkey a branch off of that. And I'm gonna be honest with you. If you're neglecting your partner's sexual needs, they cheat on you, that's not their fault. That's on you. Especially if they've communicated their needs. But what I will say is this, it's more so about when you experience certain peaks of pleasure and desire that become your new normal, it makes it difficult for you to deal with someone who would be otherwise compatible to you outside of sex. But because the sex doesn't hit certain superlatives, it doesn't hit certain peaks, it makes it difficult for you to feel that same way about them romantically. Because what you don't need to do is to desexualize a person and think that that's romantic love. It might be familial love, it might be friendly love, it may be platonic love, where sometimes a woman will confuse having a platonic love for an individual who she desires their validation and is willing to trade sex for that with true romantic love. And you need to understand that without that sexual attachment, without that sexual desire and sexual pleasure, it's not true romantic love. It's not a true relationship dynamic. That's more something that can veer on the sides of asexuality. And if a person has to have sex with you too much for too long, they will begin to resent you if they don't desire you. And sometimes people's desire will be based off of how their experiences now compared to their experiences in the past. I say that if you get into a relationship, you need to see what their superlative experiences were before you get into a relationship, where you're just testing out the sexual compatibility, you're building up your chemistry, and you're building up the different modes of compatibility. Take some of those superlative experiences and see if you can replace them. If you can't replace them, those are things that are probably going to pop up in the back of their mind as fantasies. What you want to do is be in a place where when somebody is having conversations about their girl talk or their guy talk, that the peaks of their experiences in their mind, the first thing that pops up is going to be about the things that they're doing with their current partner. If anytime you step into a sexual mind state, you have to think about past people and past experiences, then you're going to be somebody who's a liability to probably cheat on, mistreat, or get bored with your partner leading into the future. So just some dick talk, sex education, just breaking certain things down. Lube is not all like lube can be your friend. Lube can be your friend, but it's not always necessary. All right, but this is Brody. I'm out.